Well, hello again. It's Slamtail again, and this is Gorgar. Now, this is a table, one of my first tables that I created. This was actually a recreation. I very rarely do recreations because I just don't find them very challenging or very interesting just to copy somebody else's work. But this is the very first recreation that I did. And then when I finished it and played it, it was an exact replica of Golgar, and I was just bored. I didn't like the game. I thought it was very boring, because it's just a standard sort of pinball game of the time. So then I thought, how can I make this game more interesting? So that's when I started to come up with the idea of adding new sounds, new music, new rules to an old pinball game, which I thought was a great idea, and nobody had done it before, so why not? And Future Pinball doesn't use ROMs, so it allows you to rewrite the entire script from scratch. I mean, you have to do it anyway. Whatever table you're making, like Ghostbusters, you have to write every single line of the script yourself. There is no ROM. And a game like this is very easy to produce. These are very, very simple. It only took me a couple of days to make this game, providing you've got all the resources available. But yeah, when I started to add all the sound effects, this game came alive. It was like, oh my god, now I actually want to play this game. So I just went and found horror sounds from all my favourite horror films, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like Saw, and put them into the game. And I also did the new voice of Golgar. But like the original Golgar, I kept his vocabulary pretty basic. So let's get the game started, and I'll explain a few things as we go along.
Welcome, human.
So that is my voice. It's very difficult to produce that voice because you actually have to speak by sucking in air. It's quite a difficult thing to do. It's a voice I used to do when I was a kid, when I used to do the voice of a demon to scare my school buddies, and it's very effective for the voice of Golgar. So, if you're a fan of Silent Hill, you'll probably recognise the music in the background. It is from Silent Hill, and what it does is it builds the longer you play, so it starts to get more and more exciting the longer you play. Now in the left there I added a flame effect, which is the scorching ball. Now every time you put the ball in there, it scorches the ball. It means the ball gets darker and darker until it comes out black, and that starts the scorched ball frenzy. See, the ball comes out a little bit darker each time. Not possible in the real world, obviously, so I thought that was a good idea. It's called a hellhole, and at random times, and again this is the start of my random ideas that I added to pinball games to make a pinball game more interesting and less predictable. You add random events just to keep the player interested, and one of the random events is the bat out of hell, which happens when you hit that hellhole. At random times a bat can come out of hell and the whole game changes and it becomes very exciting. So every sound effect on this game has been generated from a whole bunch of horror films. That sound effect you just heard there was from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Obviously, even the attract sequence on this thing is scary. But this was the beginning of how it started. This is where, the idea of adding new sounds to an old pinball machine began. It all began with Gorgar, which I later developed further when I did the Addams Family, and I posted the video of the Addams Family online, and it got nearly 100,000 views or something like that, I don't know. And everybody was amazed by how I'd added new sound effects to the Addams Family. Like, how the hell did you do that? And just says, well, you just got to rewrite the code from scratch. You don't use the ROM. And obviously that inspired Pin Sound, who started a company based on adding new sounds to pinball games, and Pinball Browser, which allowed people to update the ROMs and add their own sound effects. So today people are doing this with their own machines. They're adding new sound effects, new music tracks, but it all started right here with Golgar, the idea that I had when I very first started to make pinball games for Future Pinball way back in 2009, I think it was. All based on the fact that I just thought the original game was very boring to play, and I wasn't. It's not for everybody. It's just not for me. I'd also done recreations of Firepower. I've done Black Knight, And ever since I've created those recreations, I've never played them because they just don't appeal to me. I did add new music to Firepower, just to make it a little bit more exciting, but Black Knight is pretty much the same. But you know, it's Black Knight, it's an old game. It's like playing it's like playing Pac-Man, you know? I mean, who plays Pac-Man nowadays when you've got a PlayStation 5? It was of the time, and this is a game which was very much of the time, but you know, I don't play PlayStation 4, I play PlayStation 5, so times move on. So this is probably the first pinball remake that was ever made. So let's see if I can do the Gorgar voice impromptu. I've got my cat on my shoulder. Hang on. Get off.
You are in hell now.
Something like that. Obviously, I ran it through a few filters on Audacity, whatever you want to call it, which is the only audio thing that I use because it's free. So you run it through a few filters, add a bit of reverb, and that's how you get the voice of Golgar. There are no other voices in the game. I wanted to keep the personality of Golgar, so he does have a limited vocabulary. But the main focus of this game, it does have all kinds of new things like the bumpers activate, a new bonus now when they hit a certain number of times. You have to light them all, and then they all start flashing, and then that starts another feature. The ball is held by the snake in the snake pit. Again, that can hold the ball and start another feature, a random feature. So that's random. So the game does have random events, and this is where my idea for random events started, like I said earlier. And I do love random events in a pinball game. And every single game you play, you'll find something that happens randomly. Because it just keeps the player on their toes, you know, and I like to shock the player. I don't want them to get too comfortable. And so that's as basic as it gets. The lighting has been improved. This is an update. This is the Ultimate Pro update. And I added an enhancement there to the back glass as well, where I had the image separate, the image in the middle light up, and obviously it's got a DMD as well. There's no DMD on the original, I think. Yeah, press start, let's play. Prepare to die. So, you know, the gas segments are still in use, but I just added a DMD, which I also did for F14 Tomcat. Just so, oh, here we are. Here's the bad out of hell mode. And you have to banish the demon in hell. So this is a demon, so I've got to banish it in the hellhole. There's a hellhole there on the left. And the idea of this is I've got to put it back in the hellhole, which is not easy. There you go. And that piece of music was from Candyman. If you like Candyman, I'm a big fan of horror films. So you know, if you played this game, you would recognise a lot of the. There's the laugh from Saw, obviously. But yeah, you know, I am a massive horror fan. I mean, I'm talking about horror films going back to the 70s, like Dawn of the Dead, Cannibal Holocaust, Driller Killer. You know, these what they used to call video nasties that I actually watched when I was a kid. You know, I watched these films when I was 6 or 7 years old. Because my brothers were bastards and they were older than me. They were like 7 or 8 years older than me when Mum and Dad used to go out and they would babysit and they would put horror films on. So I used to watch horror films and I had terrible nightmares as a kid because I thought it was all real. So yeah, it had a pretty nasty effect on me as a kid growing up. Terrible nightmares, but obviously when I figured out it was all movie magic, and that's when I became fascinated about movies. It was actually it fueled my interest in movies, and from the age of 10 onwards I wanted to be in the movies. I wanted to make movies. I wanted to be a film director. That was my passion. That's all I ever wanted to be, but it never happened, unfortunately. But so that's why my games are a little bit different from other pinball games, that I do try and add a ton of atmosphere, and try and draw the player into the experience, try and scare the player wherever I can, which is why horror games are my favourite. But when I'm doing other games as well, you know, I'll try and lift the player's spirits. You know, when you're playing other games by using the music of John Williams, I'll try and excite the player. During Jaws, you play Jaws, you know, the table is designed to take you on a journey, just like the film. So you will go through a whole range of emotions when you're playing Jaws, just like the film. And the same with Aliens, and the same with Jurassic Park. All my games contain the same level of immersion that the film offers, only you're actually interacting with the story rather than just being a participant and watching it. You're actually interacting, which is very important in pinball, to give the player that kind of interaction with the story. And it can be done. It just takes creative coding, and that's what pinball companies need. They need creative coders, not just coders, creative coders, who are effectively the film directors on a pinball project. The most important person on a pinball project is the coder, because they make the game what it is. But they have to be super creative to come up with all the best ideas. So that's Gorgar Ultimate Pro. I can't remember where that's from. Oh, that's from Silent Hill as well. So that's Silent Hill as well, which has got a fantastic soundtrack.
You are in hell now.
Okay, everybody, I'll see you again in another video. Cheerio!
I go